Hello and welcome. Today I have a very special guest. I've been able to corner this gentleman. I have been following him for the last year. I've just been on my fruit and fasting experience for just a little bit over a year now. I've been moving towards a mucusless life. For a year and a half, I've been trying to alkalize my body for the last 3 years. I've been on a fruit-only diet for the last year. And most recently, I've moved actually to a fruit juice protocol where I'm actually fasting 23 hours a day and then drinking fruit juice for about an hour and then trying to repeat that 23-hour fast again. And so I have been following this gentleman who is just world renowned. He is a owner and operator of the Mucusfree Life. I'll make sure that I attach all of these links at the end and in the post along with this video message. He's a webmaster. He's an author. He's an editor. He's the world's renowned #1 expert on mucus-free living as taught by the official Dr. Arnold Ehret. And that was the book that I read that kind of launched me into this lifestyle. I was kind of messing around with some things that I was hearing and seeing and knowing and realizing and learning, but it wasn't until I read this book that my eyes just went like this. I couldn't stop reading it, and I now have the revised author of the book, and it's in multiple languages, as well as a number of other books. Hopefully he'll hold those up and show some of those other books and some of the other work that he's shared from Dr. Arnold Ehret. This is a real pleasure for me. I'm excited to have this experience to learn and grow and share with my network, with my friends. Professor Spira. Wonderful.
Greetings, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for reaching out to me.
Thanks, man. You know, I saw a post you put out this morning, so I would think I'll just start there. I saw you put out a post today about that meat, what is that? Fake meat.
Lab-grown meat. Yeah.
Scientifically constructed meat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I actually made the original version of that video in 2013, and that was right when in the news and on CNN and all the different media outlets started talking about lab-grown meat. They did the first experimentation. They put hundreds of millions of dollars into seeing if they could grow meat with stem cells and, their little mad scientist Frankenstein stuff. And so there was this documentary on BBC where some of the chemists that created this abomination ate it on camera. And so I was like, I got to say something about this. And this was really before a lot of what I've done with Mucus-Free Life. Is a very old video in terms of when it came out. And it started going viral, and YouTube it just yanked it off. It's like, because I was criticizing vegans, the ethical vegans that were very happy about this, saying, oh wow, we can grow our meat and we can keep eating meat without the slaughter and the murder. And it was like, nah, this is way the wrong direction. But I basically predicted that within the next, I think at that time I was saying, 5-6 years, they're going to find a way to rush this into production so that it can be put out for commercial consumption. And so now it's coming back around again, where they're getting very close to putting it out commercially. And so I started seeing it up more and more in my feed. And so that was inspired. So, you know what, let me resurrect this old video.
Okay, cool. I got a few things I want to say about that.
Yeah.
First, I want to say you touched on something. Your video was going viral, and this was 5 years ago, and you said YouTube yanked it down. Can you expand on that? Why is YouTube not in support of the information that you're sharing?
So in this case, I think it was you know, in this country, the copyright issues, and really around the world, copyright issues are very gray, in just such a gray area, because you're supposed to be able to use small clips of copyrighted material as long as you're contributing something to it. If you're doing a review of a movie or music or,
I see, yes.
or educational purposes or anything like that. And at that time, I mean, I wasn't, I don't even think I was monetizing the video. So I wasn't, they were pure for free educational material. But what I used, I don't know how long the clip is. It's maybe a minute and 30 seconds. I mean, it's not that long, but I used the clip from the BBC documentary, and it was BBC tagged it saying, "Hey, take a look at this channel and this, you know, they're using our content, you know, copyright infringement. We didn't give them permission. According to the law, they shouldn't have been able to do that because I had used such a small amount and I reviewed it. I basically critiqued the work. You can't, if somebody uses a small amount of your work to critique, you're not supposed to be able to force them to take it down claiming copyright just because you don't like what they said. That's supposedly the free speech that we're supposed to have. But YouTube still has a problem. You know, they haven't figured that out. So in terms of the copyright, but there's also been situations like that where if there's something kind of controversial, or if you know there's kind of the little conspiracy behind it, so you never know. But yeah, that went down with with that particular video, and I had always thought about putting it up on Facebook because they don't have the same kind of system to yank videos down.
Excellent. I'm glad you shared that. Another thing I wanted to touch on there was the dollars that were spent on this project. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, millions and millions. Because another thing at the time was soon after this, Bill Gates came out and really was in favor of this. And so it was like, oh, here we go. Because he started funneling and investing in, and that was letting you know that because he's not going to do anything from the goodness of his heart in terms of, you know, if he's going to put hundreds of millions or billions of dollars into something, he wants to create that industry. And so once he got on board and he started really promoting this, saying that this is the future, this all meat one day will be lab grown, when they start talking like that, I'm like, uh-oh. You know, I saw where it was going. And it's just a matter of time. And so we're getting to the early stages where you're going to start seeing this, you know, in the next several years, if not even sooner. You'll start seeing this in, you know, in supermarkets and that kind of thing, where it'll be like, you know, lab grown. Lab grown.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. What's the problem with this idea, Professor?
So the problem is that, you know, in the mucus diet healing system, Arnold Ehret calls meat pus forming foods, or at least foods that degrade into a very concentrated form of mucus, you know, very kind of concentrated, that way we call pus. Anything that was blood-borne, it's, you know, the tissues, what happens when tissues and flesh decomposes, it doesn't decompose into jam, like if you were, you know, with certain fruit, or it doesn't decompose into syrup. It decomposes into this slimy, very viscous, nasty substance that's
foreign to the body. And whenever we have something foreign in the body, there's an inflammatory response. And there's two things that happen when we have an inflammatory response. We get mucus, and we get some pus.
Right, and then the other element, because sometimes people, when we say mucus forming, they'll get lymphatic fluid, and then the foods that degrade in the slime kind of confused or assume that one is the other, when those are like two different things that's happening at the same time. So the body is reacting to the poison that has been introduced into
the food that's fermenting, that's decomposing, the rotting flesh that's still in the body, the foodstuffs That's being left in the body. The body is responding to that with some inflammation and some mucus.
Right. And but those actual foods are decomposing into toxic substance that we call mucus. And so we divide the lymphatic fluid and the mucus that comes from uneliminated, undigested food substances into kind of different categories. And so when we talk about mucus forming foods, we're not talking about foods that particularly are always inflammatory, but we're talking about foods that always degrade into slime. Then the argument that some people say is, yeah, but the gastric fluids and all that takes care of it. And what Ehret's argument would be is, no, not quite, especially not if you're overeating, and depending on the quality of the mucus or pus, it's going to leave behind, at best, it's going to leave behind a residue of slime. And over years and decades, that residue of slime, gets nastier and nastier, and then, ferments and so on and so forth.
And that's toxic.
And yeah, then it becomes, toxic. And that's why you can eat these foods, you can eat horribly for years, depending on your physiology, and you will survive, and you will think, well, I ate this stuff for 50 years, I'm fine. But you don't understand that these residues are building up and building up and building up, and you don't know life without those toxic residues. And that's the problem. So you don't have a way to compare to say, well, how much better would you feel if you actually don't have all of that toxic residue that's been building up since your childhood?
And then what happens? Is it we hit a tipping point?
Yeah, well, it depends. Each person's physiological situation is different. It depends on where their weaknesses are, where the waste decides to accumulate.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so that's definitely different for each person. What's happening now with the younger generation is they're not going to be able to, and we're seeing it now, but they're not going to be able to live as long with the same quality of life, eating the same or worse than their parents and their grandparents, because their parents and grandparents had a better physiology than them. It's like a copy of a copy. In the scientific world, they want to come out with the myth of, well, things are always getting better. There's an evolution idea. Well, we're getting better and adapting. And I think the human species is getting to a point where it's becoming harder and harder to adapt as fast as it needs to adapt to the insane pus and mucus overeating that's been coming out over the past 50 years with the fast food and the kind of restaurants and stuff. Because even when you go back 100, 200 years to our closest ancestors, they didn't eat like that. The worst of them didn't eat as bad as the normal person would eat today, in terms of just all of they just
processed foods,
cooked
foods, GMOs, hormones, antibiotics,
all that. But even worse than that is because sometimes those things become the scapegoat that people that are still into eating pus and mucus forming foods, or even vegan, mucus eating vegan, will sort of point to that and say, well, I don't have GMO this, or I have
so I'm
good. Like, nah, but
I eat organic.
Yeah, you're still overeating forming foods, and then depending on how far you want to take it, you're just eating them at all, in deciding that you're going to eat them for the rest of your life. That's what's problematic. That's where we're saying it's smart, even if you don't want to totally get off of all mucus forming foods. And I, of course, don't ever recommend doing it in a short period of time. I'm an advocate of a transition diet.
It takes time. It takes time to move in this direction, and we evolve in this direction and desire to want to move in this direction, even because I think people at the very start are very resistant to that idea that, oh, they can't eat meat, they can't indulge in bread, and they can't have their wine and their coffee. You know, I try to tell people to, first of all, let's see if we can get that to the weekend and take most of the week, Monday through Friday. If we can try to eliminate those foods from Monday to Friday and then indulge on the weekend to start. And from there, let's see where that leads us.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, and one thing that I, you know, Brother Air, he would be like, man, you got to get this in. That's kind of different from us and a lot of other people is we lead with, you need to start doing enemas, and we practice lemon juice and distilled water enemas. And so, you know, depending on who you talk to, not everybody in the natural health and healing realm agrees with doing enemas. To me, that's a problem. You know, there are some cases where people would have a problem doing them, but those are very, very slim, and especially for somebody that's getting started. And so if you want to get just kind of immediately like, okay, let's get serious about this, because with the enemas, now you're going to have a bit more control over these over the addiction to the bad foods, because as long as you have those poisons circulating through your system, you're going to crave this stuff. But once you detox those poisons out, you're not going to crave it anymore. You know, and so you want to go through this physiological change and a permanent change to the point where you just don't even relate to the things that you used to eat as food.
So by eliminating some of these blockages, specifically you're talking about the colon blockages?
Yeah, the colon, intestines, and the whole goal is to get this stuff moving. So no matter what you're eating, you want to get this stuff moving. Now, when you combine the enemas along with the transition diet, so one of the things that is kind of one of my introductory recommendations along with starting the enemas is to try and adopt some of the food combining principles. So even if you continue to eat mucus and pus forming foods, there's actually certain pus forming items that's in the Mucusless diet book that's recommended in the beginning to use that's better than other things, just stuff like cottage cheese and yogurt and that kind of stuff. But what I say, okay, if you're going to eat those things, always have a big salad. That's a huge part of the methodology of when you're eating the vegetables. Have a big salad. Have if you're still going to have a little meat or have something like that, have a cooked mucus-free vegetable. You know, have some baked, and you start to find that you can be satisfied and filled up with mucus-free vegetables and raw salad, and you're just having a little bit of this other stuff on the side, and then it gets to the point where you don't have any of that.
I think this is a really big topic, because I find that I have had a lot of customers talking about having trouble going to the bathroom. So getting constipated when moving to a fruitarian style or a raw food diet. And, you know, for me, it wasn't that at all. As soon as I went to the fruit style diet, I found I was just eliminating like crazy. But I am encountering a lot of people that are having the reverse effect, where they're having congestion and being stuck with not able to go to the bathrooms.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that is the first thing I look to is are they, you know, it's always, but what are they eating and how are they combining their foods? So for a lot of people that are getting started, one of the things that a lot of raw foodists just don't ever even think about would be the cooked fruit. And so baked banana, there's a baked banana surprise recipe that I got on the website that I use is baked banana, applesauce, and dates. And so for people that are craving pie and cake and ice cream and all that kind of stuff, that hit the spot. And it's a wonderful eliminator. And I mean, it's
nice.
Move some stuff.
Real good share. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Things like,
so, you know, there's something you raised there is, you know, read the book.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Read the book.
Take the time to read the book, because, you know, it's one thing to kind of come to someone for help and then, that person says, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to get onto raw food. You need to, to cut out your meat. You need to cut out your protein. But it's impossible for any one person to regurgitate all of the information and content that's inside of a book.
Yeah, right.
And in order for you to actually make a change, you've got to consciously understand a different paradigm, because this is a different method of healing than what you've been brought up with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is, and we say that all the time, we're constantly talking about, read the book, because it always goes back to that. So much of what, so much of what I talk about, and especially the questions that I get. Oftentimes I get very general questions, emails and things like that. And
they want protocols. They want protocols. How long should I fast? What should I eat? Like just the simple answer. Like, just tell me what to eat. Right.
Right. Like, exactly. And then I'll get, am I allowed to eat such and such? It's like,
yeah.
No one's forcing you to do anything.
Right. It's all choice. And it's very important that the individual is choosing this.
Right.
It has to be a conscious choice. And as long as you're just following my protocol, you're not doing it. You're not getting it. You'll never get there that way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
you've got to take a personal initiative from within yourself to want to try to understand what's going on in terms of healing your body in a natural way.
Exactly. Yeah. Professor. And that is that's the key. And people have to be very serious about this transformation and being open to significant transformation, because that's something I see a lot where people are kind of like, I want to change and I want to do this. And I try to warn them, like, look, this isn't just this is like a significant, this is more of a change than you might have bargained for, because this is a total transformation of your whole being and your mind and the way that you think about things. It's just a total, it's not just like a little, I'm on a diet, it's a whole different kind of thing.
This is an interaction with your life in a different way. This is coming into harmony with nature and the world and your life and our planet. And
it's the real deal. I mean, I started going down this path really in search of a lot of heavy answers about the world and the purpose of humankind and why are things so bad. And I'd studied a lot of different things, a lot of different topics and all of the different spiritual guru leaders and all that stuff. And I did not find a satisfying answer until I got into the Mucusless diet healing system. And
that brought it together, and that pulled it all together. You see the understanding of the spirit. You see the understanding of all of the mindset stuff, all of the success coaching stuff, the change your life stuff, the heal your life stuff all comes together when you bring in the mucusless life.
The diet, yeah, exactly, and the lifestyle, and that's why I like to call my book Spira Speaks is I'll hold it up, the shameless plug, but I call this the lifestyle book. It's not a diet book, it's not like, okay, this is what you eat, this is how you do it. It's like, no, this is thought-provoking case studies and philosophy and little pieces of art and stories and things that really get you thinking in a different way. That can act as a foundation for a new lifestyle, a new way to live. Because I think we have to be we all need to be working on living better, living a better lifestyle if we want to have any kind of future for our children and the rest of our bloodline into the future.
Okay, so the problem with that video that went out this morning is basically that a lot of vegans were on side with the idea that they could get meat from, I guess, an ethical way.
Yeah, Yeah, so the so-called ethical vegans, they jumped, a lot of them jumped on it because they'll be very honest and saying, I did not get into veganism for any kind of health purposes. I got into it because I didn't want to harm animals. And so that segment of the vegan population will jump all over the lab grown meat. And what they're going to try to do, the Bill Gateses and all the people that will stand to gain financially from this and their investment, they're going to find a way to get as many people, to get it cheap enough so they can have as many people make the switch to lab grown meat, so they'll be able to get a significant portion of the vegan community go into the lab grown meat, and then they'll get a lot of the current meat eaters, and if they really can perfect it, then the meat eaters they're fine, because they eat stuff that's already, a piece of, Big Mac patty is pretty much, it's not 100% beef. There's all kinds of other stuff in it. So they're used to eating some kind of strange concoction. So I think that's what they're looking at. They think like, wow, we can grab this vegan people, we can grab the meat people, and then they can basically have a monopoly of that particular market. And while keeping the status quo of people continuing on with their heart attacks and strokes and all of that.
So the problem with this is that it's not really a change of mindset. It's not really getting out of the need for protein. It's like we've just changed it from animal protein to chemically grown protein. It's still, we need protein. We haven't changed our mind.
Yeah. That protein theory is that's a doozy. That thing is that needs to be, we need to put that to bed.
It's a huge roadblock that people have to get over.
Yeah, and I studied the history of it too, and I talk a little bit about it in Spira Speaks, where I kind of do an analysis of
where it came from, the origins of that thought. Yeah, was that around the 1800s?
Yeah, it was like 1838. I think the term was coined by a chemist named Mulder. It was based on some experimentation that a guy named Francois Magendie did on where he was torturing dogs. He was starving dogs and would give one dog water and another dog water and some kind of substance. And they reasoned that this substance that allowed the dog that was given basically supplements was able to live longer than the dog only with water, because that dog with the supplements was given what they termed protein, this nitrogenous substance. And that's what, and so the original sense of the term protein is pro meaning first, teen meaning principle in Latin. So protein, first principle. And so the original theory was that protein is the first principle to life. It's the most important thing in your life. If you don't get it, then you will die.
Problem with that started in 1838, 1830s, early 1800s, and it's permeated and continued to be the grassroots layer, foundational layer of understanding of nutrition.
Right.
And no matter how much we've evolved and grown scientifically and understanding of nutrition, and as much as we've, Dr. Ehret, 100 years later, was showing that all of that information was incorrect, there has been no change in the path. Now, why do you think that the path hasn't changed, Professor?
I just think that that's a good question. When you look back at the history and you start to get into the kind of Rockefeller analysis of, kind of follow the money, and the way that the medical as well as the beef dairy industries, the money behind it, the way that it
and grew, the pharmaceutical companies now,
and all of that stuff. There was just so many connections to that. And then you kind of look at what they did to squash especially natural movement that Ehret was leading, and then his contemporaries in the early
and the untimely death of Ehret.
Yeah, that causes a lot of us to ask questions as far as there was
Yes.
foul play involved in that, because that
So,
was
so you've got to read between the lines here a little bit. You've got to read between the lines a little bit about what's going on and why this has happened to see that really this is about dollars and cents. The problem is that we've got food and drug living in the same house, and as long as that's going on, the food that we're recommended is going to lead us into the path of sickness and illness, where we're now buying the drugs.
And the media has they've done such a great job as just orienting, because really all of that is based on orientation. And so people that have never read a book on physiology or a book on nutrition or a natural health book of Ehret or anybody else, they will speak assertively
about the need
for protein, about the need for whatever, based on this orientation that started, since there was radio and television, that has really been into that. Before that, it would just be in magazines and newspapers. And you can go back to the old newspapers and you can see the beginnings of this kind of orientation, of orienting people to basically be lifelong consumers in these terrible industries. And when you look at the kind of money, and that's why, and the ruthlessness of the people involved in these industries, that's where you understand you're not going to prove anything to them using scientific data and studies. You could bring in 1 million studies saying how horrible meat is. They are not going to change anything or budge. If anything, like they said, if they deal with the market. And so if people educate themselves and they start moving in a different direction, then they will change back to the lab grown meat. What that tells us,
alter their product.
Well, what that really tells us is that there is right now, in this moment in time, there is a significant shift that large numbers of people that were formerly a part of the old market, the old meat and dairy market, are starting to wake up and starting to move in this plant-based direction. So in the 90s and the 80s, they already tried to fight it. And that was with all those, if you remember the commercials, beef, it's what's for dinner, and pork, the other white meat, and got milk. All of those campaigns were when people were really starting to take a look, more serious look at vegetarianism and things like that. And so that was their initial thing. Now it's getting to the point where they can't just run a campaign like that and have everybody come back. So now they have to create a product that will stop people in their tracks. And so it's like, well, hey, we grew this meat. We didn't hurt any animals. So come on. So
they seem like the white light that's bringing the solution to you, for you.
Yeah, right.
Whereas they are the ones that have created the problem, and are not accepting responsibility for it, and they're keeping everyone trapped in this protein kind of mental state that has to change. So let's go further. Vegans in general, I mean, God bless vegans for moving forward. Great, fantastic. But what's your message to the vegan population?
I mean, my message to the vegan population is check out the original vegan diet, which is the Mucusless diet healing system. And there's an article
on Amazon. You can order that book. It's very affordable.
Yeah, mucusfreelife.com. We have them there as well. Kindle versions, is audiobook version.
So you can buy them from your website. Great.
Yeah. And so if you don't feel like reading, you can listen to it.
Awesome.
And there's an article on mucusfreelife.com that I wrote where I lay out the argument of why the Mucusless diet healing system is the original, or at least the mucus-free, which is something you work toward within the context of the Mucusless diet healing system, is the first largely kind of documented,
organized
and distributed. That's the word I was looking for. Distributed vegan diet. And then I recently put up a video on my YouTube where I talk about that history a bit. I won't go into a whole lot of that right now, but basically there was a few books that were kind of recipe books or plant-based cooking books, but there was never a systematic dietary to actually show you how to transition to a plant-based diet. I don't see any of that.
And this book does that, and it provides that. So a real important read, I think, for anyone that wants to make this switch and wants to really heal their lives.
Yeah.
All right. So your message to the vegans is, read the book, actually look at what the true original vegan is or was.
Yeah.
And Doritos are vegan, I think, aren't they? Coca-Cola.
There's one of them.
It's vegan.
Yeah, there's a certain flavor of Doritos that's vegan. Oreo cookies. Right. Coke and
so processed foods are vegan, and we have to realize that vegan is not the way. It's not the solution. It's a step in the right direction. Bravo, that you've made that step. But we've got to go further, people.
Yeah, we got to go further, and don't wait until you get sick. That would be the real message, because vegans usually kind of ignore the mucusless diet until they're sick, and so then they're a little bit more receptive to what we have to say when they're coughing up green slime and blowing their nose, or they constipated and they can't go to the bathroom. Then they're like, what was that mucusless diet you was talking about? What was that enemas you was talking? So if you're smart, you won't wait until you get sick. You start investigating this now, and then you'll notice that if you can adopt, everybody kind of adopts different speed of transition, and that's part of what's up to you. Or if you work with, there's not a whole lot of us, but people that specialize in coaching and doing mucusless diet consulting that are very knowledgeable about the transition diet that can help you kind of line it up. You can there's a whole section of vegetarian recipes and vegan recipes, and it's not out of the question to ever use any of that kind of vegan processed stuff. The key is to systematically use it, combine it with mucus-free vegetables so that it eliminates better. It doesn't sort of fester inside you and turn into slime. So you're bringing a system to it. A little bit of fasting, a little bit of, it's a whole different approach, yet you can still use those foods. This is not a cold turkey type of dietary approach or system. This is a very methodical, logical, and yet simple.
Take your time, move through it slowly, and as you feel comfortable and as you get the desire, take a little bit deeper step towards this direction, which is outlined all in the book. So going further with the vegans, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about nutritional need and nutritional requirement. Vegetables are thought of as being number one, and they contain all the iron and the vitamin and the mineral, and they have all the special fiber, and they have all of the special nutrient that we've been told that we need. What do you want to say about this? Is it vegetables or is it fruits?
So within the context of the mucusless diet healing system, the ultimate food item for human species is mucus-free fruits. These days I have to add that on there because there's a number of people that are very invested in mucus-forming fruits, which you can use transitionally, but I wouldn't recommend staying on them for the rest of your life. But that's, and I'm talking about the fatty kind of fruits and your avocados, that kind of stuff. And they get very angry at me. The raw foodists hate me for that because the
avocado's a big one. The avocado's a big one.
Yeah. And I've never said that they're not allowed or that you can't use them, but just be mindful that they're not something that you want to use all the time.
They're not a detoxifying fruit. They're not a mucus-free fruit.
Yeah, and they leave behind slime. If you notice, the kind of stuff that you will be able to notice, if you go for a period of time eating totally mucus-free, and you have a bowel movement, you'll notice that when you wipe, there's not there should be very little, depending on how clean your colon is, there'll be very little residue that you even have to wipe. But eat an avocado or eat something else that's mucus forming, and then when you go to the bathroom, you're going to notice that is not all coming out, and there's going to be some slime residue, more slime residue, and that again, and that's a way for you to see firsthand what we're talking about in terms of mucus forming foods versus non-mucus forming. The mucus forming,
so
residue.
Fruit is the healer. Fruit is the healer. We got to move to this direction of more fruit and as much healthy mucus-free fruit as we can get into our body, and not be so worried and concerned about consuming vegetables and a whole variety of a different kind of vegetable, because we've been sold on this idea that we need to have all this variety. We need to have all these certain different things in order for our body to be healthy. Mono fruit.
Yeah. So that's something you work toward within the Mucusless diet. And, we don't necessarily rush you to it, but when you want, there's different gradations and levels of what we would call fasting. Everybody's kind of got their own definitions, but our definition of fasting, a simple definition, is just restriction and improvement in the intake of whatever you're putting in your body of food. So and that it's a relative experience. What is a fast for my physiology might not be a fast for somebody else's physiology, depending on where they are. For instance, someone like my friend Brother Air, he does 40-day dry fast. That's, I haven't done.
Teetering on breatharian?
Well, he's that term has had a lot of negative press, so we kind of we have a band called the Breatharian Ensemble, but it's just the name of a band. But the connection with the Arnold Ehret, and I kind of stopped using that term other than the band, because it got real, people have just taken that way out of context, and they don't really understand our definition of it. But with Arnold Ehret, we just say, well, what is the first principle to life? The word protein. What's the first principle to life? What's the most important thing? Most important thing is air, is oxygen.
It's not protein.
It's not protein.
No.
You can go days without protein.
Yes.
You can't go 5 minutes without air.
Right.
And so air is premium in your reality. And so we are first and foremost air gas engines, meaning we run, you put gasoline in car, you put air in the human body. And if we don't have that air, we're not going too far, so you can't not breathe, but go get protein injections or eat a bunch, you got to breathe, you got to first and foremost. And so we don't know how long a human being can go without food. That's not determined.
Many have gone for years without food. Many have gone without years.
There's various documented accounts. Arnold Ehret had the world record for longest documented fast for a long time. He did a 49-day fast that was monitored by government officials, and so he was in the books for that. And then now there's, now I'm cautious with different people, when you look on YouTube and there's people that are claiming to be breatharians and claiming to have done this long time. I'm very cautious about that, because oftentimes I'm not seeing what I think I should see, and to actually convince me that they're doing that. There's some physiological things that I think would be in place if they was really on that level. That is just, there's a look that's going to be there, and there's a kind of a kind of, a skin thing is going to be happening that I often don't see, just as far as the people that's out there that claim that they, that they're not eating anything. But the point here is just that instead of focusing on, well, how long can I not eat and all that kind of stuff, just focus on your breath. Just be conscious and cognizant of That
Be
is,
present. Be
yeah,
present.
be present. It's all revolving around that. So
Come
once
to the
you,
moment. Come to the breath. Watch the breath in. Watch the breath out. Be conscious of your breath.
right, and understand, that obstruction, anything that gets in between the oxygen coming into your body and in your bloodstream is going to be a problem. Because as soon as you can't get oxygen into your bloodstream, the body comes to a standstill. It's over. And so that's first and foremost. Then the question is, well, what foods can I eat that do not cause the body to become constipated and obstructed on a cellular level and does not cause damage through acids and things like that inside the body? And that's where you get into your fruits and
Your mucus-free foods, because if we don't have that pus or that mucus inside the lungs obstructing oxygen coming into the body, obstructing oxygen getting to the blood, we're not interrupting that number one vital process that we really do need first and foremost.
Right, exactly.
Excellent, sir. Really excellent. So monofruit, just to push you there a little bit further, eating one fruit only. I've talked to the mangotarian. I'm supposed to talk to him. He lived on mangoes for 6 months. I lived on melons for a good 60 to 90 days, somewhere in there, on eating a couple of melons every single day for a period of time. Is this healthy?
I would say it depends on the person, and it depends on their physiology, and it depends on their transition. That's rarely something that I recommend that people do. It's kind of something that when they do it, they're just on their own. It's like, okay, you're a pioneer, go down that path, but just don't come back and try to blame something if you weren't ready.
If you were called to do that, follow that calling, perhaps.
Yeah, follow the calling.
Follow the calling. Yes. Follow the calling. If you're inspired by that, if that's calling you, yeah.
But you want to be smart and really understand. Sometimes I would always recommend enemas to be a part of that type of thing. And I know some of the folks that do that they're not necessarily advocates of enemas and necessarily do enemas like that. But when you do a fast and you're doing enemas and you're constantly really getting that residue and that old, 15 and 20 pounds of old waste out of your gut, you're not, because I think some people do that, and some people fast, especially early in their transitions. They're actually fasting on their old waste. It's like they got all this old uneliminated waste in their body. And if they're not doing enemas and all they're doing is, drinking the waters, that's why, they can do that. Fast forward 15 years of serious cleansing and transition, and it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different experience. And so it's sometimes it's easier to do some of these things right out of the gate, the first several years that you're going down this path. But if you don't transition gradually enough, and and physiologically you're not up to that task, you can run into some issues.
Okay, so fasting. I mean, you've touched on it here. How long do you recommend fasting for people?
So the official general recommendation is, again, read the book. There's Rational Fasting and Mucusless Diet. Ehret's recommendation is 2 to 3 days of juice fasting, and then as you start to intersperse that, if you do take 2 or 3 months where you're eating the transition diet and you're having days of being 100% mucus free, you're doing enemas. Every other week or every week you do a 2 to 3 day fast with the enemas. By the time you get to like 4 or 5 months in, you're going to be at a whole different level. What I usually recommend that instead of no transition, not doing any of that kind of systematic work with having periods of mucus free, having some mucus, we call mucus lean, when you have a item that is mucus forming involved. The short-term fasting, instead, what some people try to do is, okay, I'm gonna eat nothing but fruit for several months. I'm just not an advocate of that, especially if you've not really transition. Now, Brother Air, who introduced me to the diet and has practiced the diet now for over 40 years, and he's just become just a master of fasting. He, for the first 10 or 15 years of his transition, he was very logical, very controlled, wasn't trying to do any of this kind of really stuff that people are trying to do within the first couple of years. He wasn't doing any of that. But by the time he got to 20 years of just dedicated practicing the diet, that was the first time he did an entire year of nothing but fruit. And then after that 20-year mark, he just never came back to a regular kind of transition. It was like, 8-month juice fast, 40-day dry fast, so after 20 years of serious transition, then he's just stratosphere.
People are rushing it too much. We're all rushing it too much, trying to get ourselves detoxified too quickly.
Right.
Take your time, transition, allow this to happen over a number of years.
Right. Exactly.
This is a lifestyle goal that you're getting into long term. Stop trying to get it done overnight. Stop jumping on the scale every single week and say, why am I not losing weight? Why am I not losing weight? Get beyond that. We've got to heal. We've got to get that. We've got to get that residual toxic elements out of your colon, out of your intestines, out of your kidneys, out of your adrenals. Heal your organs. Remove the toxic elements from all of your body before we're going to be seeing that constant forward progress.
Right. And like we say, reconstruct your bloodstream and change your physiology. I'm interested in permanent changes to your physiology. When it should be about willpower. Once you get to a certain level, it's not about like, okay, I'm forcing myself not to do this. It's mind over matter. It's like, no, if you apply the transitional principles, you get your body to the point where it becomes impossible to go back. And that's what I'm talking about, where that, that kind of point of no return, you got to be mentally ready to get to that. And sometimes people think they are, and then they get there and they're not able to go back at all. And they're like, oh, okay, I see. It's
your physiology changes and your body will not accept and utilize those materials anymore. Your thoughts have changed. You're a different person, and you're not forcing yourself to do this any longer. You're choosing to do it because your life is better.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. So, sir, water, hydration.
Yeah. So, us as you see, I drink water. I like drinking water. Some practitioners of Mucusless diet don't drink any water. They might do juice, fruit juice, or they eat their water, so to speak. They eat a lot of, the fresh fruits and vegetables and things. So water it's not really a topic that I get too deep into as far as like something that I'm constantly telling people, like some people say, yo, you got to drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
So you don't hear, because in some cases, if you're real acidic, the water is not going to, it's not going to do much. It's not going to help alkalize you any faster. And so with water, I tell people to be intuitive with it. If you're thirsty and you want something other than juice or something, then drink your water. But I definitely don't recommend that, drink a gallon of water a day kind of concept.
Okay, cool. I'm in agreement with you there. So, I'll just, I don't want to go too much longer here. I don't want to be too long-winded with this, but I just ask you, healing of all things, sir, is this possible? Have you seen it? What have you witnessed? I know you don't really like to talk about disease because you don't want to put energy and light towards that misplaced kind of thought. Like there is only one disease, correct?
Yeah. So you always got to go back to the source, and the source is that we've been transforming our physiology for the worst by getting further and further away from nature, consuming unnatural foods. And so, as far as, if disease, there's a lot of different cases, or human illness. Like I say, I like to look at, well, what's the symptoms? well, what's your diet like? What is, what is really going on, and then study the case studies. There's a, real fascinating case study was, Fred Hirsch, who became the right-hand person of Ehret. He was like 27 and the doctor said that he was going to die, and he met Ehret, and a year later, he had threw his crutches away and he was back at it, and he lived to be, 91 years of age. So the information is out here. There's a lot of healing that's going on down this path, as long as we don't kind of get into the extremism part of it, which is what I try to combat that as much as I can, to really get people into thinking transitionally, as opposed to, this is not an overnight kind of thing. You don't heal yourself overnight, where people are used to taking little pieces of chemistry, little pills, and having things change automatically. You got to get out of that, get out of that mindset and allow your body to, kind of go on the journey that your body takes you on of healing. But I do recommend, if you have a serious situation, first and foremost, you read the Mucusless Diet book, get into stuff, but then, try to find some folks that you can work with. There's not a whole lot of us on the Mucusless Diet side of it, and I'm taking right at the moment. I'm on a little sabbatical, so I'm from coaching, so I'm not accepting a whole lot of new clients. I will be releasing a e-course very soon, so that's
cool.
Kind of
great. Please include me on any information.
Yeah, I will. In fact, while I bring it up, let me I'll share my screen if it lets me share it here. Can you see that? So this is just to show the Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course. This is over 12 hours of brand new material. So I have videos that are anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes that go through step by step. I go through the entire Mucusless Diet book, lesson by lesson. Each lesson has a video, has a quiz, has the downloads of all the book information. There's I got a book called Spira's Notes, which is basically like a Cliff's Notes. If you I thought in Canada you guys got something else up there, but that type of book.
That's good. We're good. Yeah.
I forget the name of that, but I call mine Spira's Notes. So it's the physical version of it.
Cool.
Basically,
cool. Just really cool
outlines of the entire Mucusless Diet book, and questions and review questions and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey man, I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking with you some more.
Awesome, we'll do that. So I'll make sure that I connect anything link-wise. Hopefully you can send me anything link-wise over email or through Messenger, and I'll make sure I attach everything to anything that I put this video with, so that people can reach out and get more knowledge and deeper understanding. Because what is it, Professor? Is it a mindset change?
It is there's a mindset change, definitely, physiological change, and it can happen in concert. It can happen and should happen holistically and kind of parallel. As your body transforms, your mind starts to change, and it kind of happens as you move forward. And that's, and you want it to be like that. There's some people that they change their physiology, but they're not working on the mental part. And there's some people that kind of really work all on the mental, but they're not working on the physiological, and so this is a holistic approach and system where you want to be working on all of that.
Awesome.
Just every day, you just take it to the next level. Just a little bit.
Thank you so much, Professor. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Peace.
Great. Thank you.